Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are gearing up, basically, strapping on our, maybe not crampons, but definitely our thinking caps. We're opening a massive, really confounding case file
Yeah, a big one.
on one of the greatest natural landmarks, and I mean, certainly one of the most enduring mystery hubs in North America. We are talking about Mount Shasta, that colossal, beautiful, and frankly, utterly bizarre mountain in Northern California.
Oh, absolutely. Shasta is way more than just, a pile of rock. It's
Yeah.
like this monument to every kind of mystery the human mind can, well, conjure up. It's a 14,000-foot active volcano.
Active, that's key.
Right. And it somehow acts as this nexus point for a whole universe of high strangeness. I mean, we're talking hidden worlds, subterranean civilizations,
Yeah.
ascended masters popping up with divine messages.
I can't make this stuff up.
You really can't. Plus, it's got this documented history as a major UFO hotspot. And then maybe the most disturbing part, a really terrifying and growing file of unsolved missing persons cases.
And that intersection, right, the profound spiritual claims bumping right up against genuine, heartbreaking true crime. That's exactly why we're diving in today.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission is to really conduct a deep dive into all this source material.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a huge pile today. It ranges from, like, USGS hazard reports
Yeah, the serious geology stuff.
and cold police files all the way to Wintu tribal lore and these really obscure 20th century esoteric manuscripts. We got to distill all this down.
Try to make sense of it.
Yeah, to understand the fundamental question, why? Why does this one peak generate such an unbelievable volume of legend, tragedy, and, paranormal belief?
Mm.
What is it about the mountain itself that makes it such a mythology magnet?
Well, I think to even begin to understand the lore, you first have to grasp the sheer raw power of the thing, the physical structure itself. Mount Shasta is just an absolute giant.
14,000 feet, you said.
14,162 feet, yeah. It just dominates the landscape there in the Southern Cascades, rises almost 10,000 feet clear above the land around it. It's not just tall, it's one of the planet's real heavyweights.
And it's not just about the height, is it? You mentioned its volume earlier. It's the most voluminous in the Cascades.
Correct. Yeah, volume is key for volcanologists. They look at the total mass, the amount of stuff actually erupted. Shasta's volume is estimated somewhere between 350 and 400 cubic kilometers. It's staggering.
Wow. How does that compare to, say, Rainier?
Well, Rainier is a bit taller, technically, but Shasta, it contains nearly twice the bulk, twice the mass of material compared to most of those other famous peaks up in the Pacific Northwest. It's just this overwhelming presence. You can see it for hundreds of miles on a clear day. It radiates this power that people, I think, instinctively interpret as something spiritual or supernatural.
And crucially, this massive presence, it's not just sitting there looking pretty. It's not passive.
Not at all. Despite looking serene, permanent, the USGS classifies Shasta's threat potential as very high.
Very high. Wow.
Yeah, that puts it right up there with the most potentially dangerous volcanoes in the U.S. Think Mount St. Helens, Kilauea in Hawaii. Shasta's in that league. It's dormant, okay, meaning it's not erupting right now, but it is certainly not extinct.
How do we know? How do we know the engine's still running down there?
Well, you can actually see the evidence right up on the summit. There are persistent hot springs bubbling away. And fumaroles, those are vents releasing volcanic gases, steam. They're constantly seeping out of the summit crater, specifically near the Hotlam cone.
So visible signs.
Yeah, clear geological indicators that the magma chamber way down below is still pressurized, still active. And the sheer latent, kind of terrifying power, that's the foundation. All the mysteries, all the lore, everything else we're going to talk about, it's built on the physical reality of this immense, potentially catastrophic giant just sleeping there. So if we delve a bit deeper into its physical structure, its architecture, we find this complexity that, interestingly, kind of mirrors its mythological life. Shasta isn't just one simple symmetrical cone like you see on postcards.
Right. It looks like that classic volcano shape, but it's not.
Not really, no. Geologists classify it as a compound stratovolcano. It's more like this colossal mashup, emerging of four distinct, overlapping volcanic cones. Each one represents a separate major phase in the mountain's history.
So it's like geological layers
Yeah.
built on top of each other over time.
Yeah.
What are these four parts?
Okay, so the four main cones are, first, the heavily glaciated Sargent's Ridge cone, that's on the south side. Then there's Misery Hill cone, which is a really heavily eroded remnant. Then Shastina, that one stands out. It looks like its own separate mountain, a satellite peak.
I think I know that one.
Yeah, it's quite distinct. And finally, the highest and the youngest part, that's the Hotlam cone. That makes up the current summit. So this composite structure means that the mountain literally shows you a different face, a different history, depending on which way you approach it. The complexity is right there in the rock. It's mostly andesite and dacite, typical Cascade stuff.
Okay, that's complex. But let's talk about the really jaw-dropping part of its past, the foundational trauma, as you called it, that ancestral collapse, hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Yeah, this event. It was truly cataclysmic, world-class scale. The original ancestral Shasta started forming maybe 600,000 years ago, grew into this truly enormous peak, and then somewhere between 300,000 and 360,000 years ago, the entire north side of that massive volcano just catastrophically failed.
Didn't just collapse, you said. It tore itself apart.
Pretty much. It wasn't a slow slide.
I read this is one of the largest known events of its kind anywhere on Earth. Oh, yeah? What was the scale of that debris flow?
Immense. Just immense. We estimate about 27 cubic kilometers of rock. A huge chunk of the mountain just slid off, probably in minutes.
It created one of the largest known debris avalanches on the planet.
27 cubic kilometers. That's hard to even picture.
It is, and this enormous mass of rock and debris surged northwest, covering a massive area of the Shasta Valley. We're talking over 170 square miles. That's about 440 square kilometers, just buried under mountain debris. And that's what left behind those weird hills, the hummocks, the ones that apparently confused settlers for ages.
Exactly. For centuries, those rolling, kind of bizarrely shaped hills in the Shasta Valley, the hummocks, they were just this weird geological puzzle. Nobody really understood them. It wasn't until the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens up in Washington.
Ah, the modern comparison.
Right. St. Helens had a similar, though much smaller, collapse and debris avalanche. When geologists studied the hummocks left by St. Helens, they suddenly had this aha moment. They realized the Shasta hummocks were the result of the same process, just on a vastly larger scale, way back in the past. The Shasta we see today is basically the monumental remains of a structure that once violently ripped itself open.
That history, that transformation, destruction, rebirth on that kind of scale,
Yeah.
it really demonstrates the mountain's power to just fundamentally reshape the world.
Absolutely. And if the mountain has that kind of destructive, transformative power literally written into its deep past, you can kind of see why humans might project every other kind of power, spiritual, destructive, whatever, onto it.
Makes sense. So let's bring it back to the present threat then. How often do eruptions actually happen there?
Well, the historical record is pretty sobering. Looking back over the last 10,000 years, Shasta has erupted, on average, at least once every 800 years or so.
Okay, that sounds infrequent enough, maybe.
But if you zoom in on just the last, say, 750 years, the frequency actually tightens up quite a bit. More like one eruption every 250 to 300 years. That suggests it's been more active recently, relatively speaking.
And the last confirmed big one was really quite recent, historically.
Yeah, very recent in geological terms. The last confirmed significant eruption, and this included devastating pyroclastic flows, superheated gas and ash moving at hurricane speeds,
Tough.
and huge destructive mud flows called lahars that happened only about 200 to 300 years ago, devastated its eastern flank. So yeah, this isn't just some passive, beautiful landmark. It's an active, immense entity. And its history of violent, transformative power creates this kind of natural cathedral of awe, which is, the perfect psychological bedrock for all the claims of high strangeness and spiritual encounters that follow.
Okay, so that physical power, the geology, lays the foundation.
Yeah.
Now, let's bring in that first layer of meaning, of interpretation, the indigenous perspective. We really have to shift focus from just the rock itself to the foundational stories, the ones written by the people who've lived in its shadow for, well, millennia.
Yes, and this layer is absolutely essential because it contrasts so starkly with the later stuff, the imported esoteric myths that came much, much later. For the tribes there, the Shasta, the Wintu, Modoc, Karuk, Pit River people, the mountain isn't just a high peak. It's the absolute sacred center of the
The
universe.
center of everything.
Literally. It's revered as the home of the creator, and for many, the actual origin point of human life on Earth. This isn't casual respect. It's a deep, profound, existential reverence.
And that reverence showed up in how they treated the space, right?
Yeah.
There's a specific sacred zone.
Exactly. There was a clear demarcation. Traditionally, the area above the tree line, roughly above 8,000 feet, that was considered a sacred cosmological district. It was understood as an area of immense spiritual power. Too potent, really, for just casual human presence.
So no climbing for fun back then.
Definitely not. The mountain wasn't a place for recreation. Only highly trained spiritual leaders, medicine men, medicine women would venture up to those heights. And only for specific, very serious ceremonies. Things like vision quests, deep purification rituals, receiving spiritual guidance for the whole community. The mountain itself was understood as a living, powerful entity inhabited by spirits, guardians.
What I find really fascinating is how sophisticated these ancient myths are.
Hmm.
You mentioned they're not just simple stories. They often function almost like metaphorical geological reports,
Yeah.
translating the volcanic reality into narrative form.
They absolutely do. It's incredible. Take the Modoc and Klamath creation story, for example. It perfectly marries the physical structure of the volcano with the divine. The story describes the sky spirit, Skell, finding the world above too cold. So he carves a hole in the sky, pushes down immense amounts of snow, ice, and fire.
Creating the mountain.
Exactly, creating this massive lodge, Mount Shasta. And he populates this lodge with the first trees, the first animals, including the first grizzly bears, who were seen as these powerful spiritual beings. They could walk upright, they could speak.
And this story, it has that direct explosive link between the mountain's core and where humans came from, doesn't it?
Precisely. The story goes that the sky spirit's daughter got too curious, went up to the top of the lodge, the crater, which the story calls the smoke hole.
The volcanic crater.
Right. And the wind spirit blew her right off the mountain. She was found down below by the grizzly bears, raised as one of them, and eventually married their eldest son. And their children, these bear-human hybrids, were the ancestors of all the Indian tribes. So the narrative explicitly links the mountain's volatile, fiery center to the very origin of the human race. It literally says, humanity started right here, in the heat of this specific mountain.
That translation of volcanic power, it seems even clearer in that other legend, the War of Spirits.
Oh yeah, that's a spectacular piece of oral history, especially for the Klamath people. It describes this epic battle up in the heavens between Skell, the good spirit of the above world living on Shasta.
Her guy in Shasta.
Right, and Lau, the spirit of the below world, who made his home inside Mount Mazama, which we now know collapsed to form Crater Lake.
Okay, so a battle between neighboring volcanoes, basically. How did these spirits fight?
Their weapons were the very stuff of Cascade volcanism. They fought by furiously throwing lava, red-hot rocks, fire, ash, back and forth across the landscape, demonstrating this immense destructive power. Skell was seen as generally benevolent, Lau was destructive, and the climax of the battle was the total annihilation of Mount Mazama's peak, Lau's Lodge, which created the caldera we now call Crater Lake.
So it's not just a ghost story. It's, like you said, a sophisticated, poetic, and actually pretty accurate mythological interpretation of the massive volcanism that shaped that whole region.
Exactly. And it's really critical, I think, for you listening to grasp the contrast here. These ancient stories, they aren't really equivalent to modern supernatural tales about, ghosts or aliens. These are highly sophisticated metaphorical frameworks. They're like ancient investigations into existential power, designed to create deep reverence, establish boundaries, and foster respect for an immense and very real natural force.
They're the foundation text, really.
They are. And as we're about to see, the modern, often imported myths were basically scrawled right on top of this powerful foundation, often completely misunderstanding or just ignoring that original language of awe and deep respect.
Okay, let's jump forward. Fast forward to the late 19th century. We need to trace the, frankly, absurd and fascinating journey of the Lemurian myth. The story of this advanced lost race living in some kind of crystal city deep inside Mount Shasta. The origin is maybe one of the strangest things we found in the source material, because it starts with lemurs, actual lemurs.
It truly is one of the weirdest chains of custody for a myth ever. The whole thing kicks off in 1864 with a zoologist named Philip Sclater. He was scratching his head over fossil evidence. See, lemur fossils were found in Madagascar and also in India, but nowhere on the African mainland or in the Middle East in between.
Okay, weird distribution.
Yeah, so Sclater's hypothesis, based on the science they had then, was that there must have been some kind of land bridge across the Indian Ocean connecting those places. And he named this theoretical, hypothetical bridge Lemuria, after the lemurs.
Right, so purely a biological theory to explain primate fossils, and of course, totally debunked later by plate tectonics. We know continents move now.
Exactly. But before science caught up, that name Lemuria, it was immediately grabbed by the burgeoning esoteric and occult movements of the late 19th century. Figures like Helena Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy, she co-opted the term.
But she wasn't talking about a land bridge.
Oh no, they completely reimagined Lemuria, not as a bridge, but as this vast, highly evolved, spiritually advanced root race of humanity that supposedly existed millions of years ago, even before Atlantis.
Okay, so we've gone from a scientifically disproven Indian Ocean landmass to a legendary Pacific supercivilization. But it's still nowhere near California yet. Who made that final crucial imaginative leap to stick this fantasy right inside Mount Shasta?
Ah, okay. That really specific monumental connection seems to come down to two key figures. The first one, the initial spark, was a guy named Frederick Spencer Oliver.
Oliver. Wasn't he just a teenager?
Yeah, he was a teenager living near Shasta up in Eureka, California, back in the 1880s. And he claimed he was communicating with this entity, this spirit guide named Philus the Tibetan, through automatic rating. This resulted in this massive, kind of rambling esoteric book called A Dweller on Two Planets. It wasn't published until 1905 after he died.
So what was the Shasta connection in Oliver's big book? Was it central?
Not really central, no. The book covers all sorts of spiritual journeys across the cosmos, past lives on Venus, that kind of thing. But there was this specific section where the main character's spiritual body, his astral form, is guided deep into caverns beneath Mount Shasta. And Oliver makes this brief, almost casual mention that descendants of the lost Lemurians were dwelling down there, having survived the sinking of their continent. That single passage seems to be the seed, just planted the idea.
Okay, so Oliver plants the seed, but it was the second figure, Harvey Spencer Lewis, who really made it grow, made it stick in the public mind.
Exactly. Lewis was the massive popularizer. He was the founder of Amor C, the ancient mystical order Rosicrucis. It became this huge global Rosicrucian organization. Still is, actually. Lewis, writing under a pseudonym, published a book in 1931 called Lemuria, the lost continent of the Pacific.
And that book cemented the Shasta connection.
That was the one. It took Oliver's little spark and basically turned it into canon for the New Age crowd. Lewis solidified the popular, really irresistible narrative. Survivors from the sunken continent of Lemuria fled to Mount Shasta. And using their incredible advanced technology, they built a secret, multi-leveled city named Telos deep inside the volcano's core. Still active, still hot, but they're down there.
Wow. And once that narrative was out there, widely published,
Yeah.
people started seeing things, right? The eyewitness accounts started rolling in almost immediately, kind of validating the story.
Absolutely. Suddenly people were seeing Lemurians, and the descriptions became pretty uniform. They were always described as exceptionally tall, often 7 feet or even more, graceful, long hair, often white or golden, and always appearing in these immaculate, flowing white robes. Just the perfect visual for an ascended master type race.
Let's get into those specific details because they're astonishing.
Yeah.
Tell us about that 1932 Los Angeles Times report and the Lemurians' really weird shopping list.
Right, that's a classic piece of Shasta lore. The report detailed a journalist, Edward Lancer, who was traveling near the mountain. He claimed he saw Shasta suddenly ablaze with a strange reddish-green light. Very specific colors.
Okay.
So he asks someone else on the train or bus, what's that? And the person just replies totally matter-of-factly, oh, that's the Lemurians, like it was common knowledge. So Lancer, being a journalist, digs deeper in the local towns, and he finds multiple people telling similar stories. Townspeople reporting that occasionally these tall, white-robed men would descend from the mountain into the local stores.
And they weren't just buying milk and bread, I gather.
Definitely not. They consistently purchased enormous quantities of just two things, sulfur and salt.
Sulfur and salt. Why those?
Well, geologically, it's kind of interesting, right? Sulfur is abundant near volcanoes, used in chemistry, purification rituals maybe. Salt is essential, a preservative, who knows? But the really crucial detail was how they paid. They never haggled. They always paid with generously sized raw gold nuggets, worth far more than the sulfur and salt they were buying, which of course just reinforced the idea that they had access to vast, unbelievable riches hidden down there in the mountain.
And the hidden city itself, Telos.
Yeah.
That sounds like something straight out of, I don't know, Buck Rogers or something. What's it supposedly like inside?
Oh, the descriptions are just dazzling. If you're a utopian fantasy, Telos is imagined as this vast, multi-leveled metropolis. Some accounts say it houses up to 1.5 million beings. Deep enough inside the mountain to survive any kind of surface cataclysm, it's supposed to be this subterranean paradise. Perpetual light, unlimited energy, all powered by immense, highly advanced crystals.
of course, crystals.
Naturally. And they supposedly have technology way beyond ours. Teleportation devices, levitation,
Hmm.
and giant disc-shaped motherships that they use for, interdimensional or maybe interplanetary travel. And people claim to see these ships near the peaks sometimes.
So when you step back, what we're looking at here is this fascinating cultural artifact, isn't it? It's like the perfect 20th century myth, built on a debunked scientific theory,
Yep, poor lemurs.
then appropriated by these esoteric thinkers, and finally cemented into popular culture by best-selling authors like Lewis. It really shows this powerful human need, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To locate the most fantastic, the most advanced, the most desirable fantasy, the lost civilization, and anchor it firmly within a tangible, mysterious, and really awe-inspiring landmark like Mount Shasta. It makes the fantasy feel almost real.
Okay, so the narrative around Shasta now takes a pretty sharp and frankly much darker turn. We move away from the, dazzling fantasy of hidden cities
Yeah, this is the tough part.
and into the grim reality of unsolved human tragedy. These are the missing persons cases, the cold files that really blur the line between just accidental loss, maybe foul play, and genuine high strangeness. And they often end up getting interpreted through the mountain's own mythology.
And we have to be careful here, right? Maintain objectivity. Treat these as real-world investigations where, for whatever reason, the evidence just ran out.
Let's start with one of the earliest ones that got tangled up in the lore, the prospector, J.C. Brown, back in 1934.
Ah, Brown's story. It's the perfect storm of, greed and mystery. He was a prospector, and way back in 1904, he claimed he'd stumbled upon this elaborate system of tunnels and caves deep inside Shasta.
Tunnels leading where?
He said they led to a lost subterranean city, populated by the remains of ancient giant beings he claimed 10-foot-tall humanoids, complete with amazing artifacts, piles of gold, and these perfectly preserved mummified giants. Now, obviously, that claim resonates perfectly with the Lemurian myth that was already starting to circulate.
But he didn't say anything for decades. He found this in 1904 and then kept quiet. Yeah, apparently kept it secret for 30 years. Then, in 1934, he suddenly resurfaces down in Stockton, California, and he starts talking. He successfully gathers this group of about 80 people, investors, spiritual seekers, just curious folks who are all ready to fund and join him on this massive expedition back to Shasta to locate his hidden city. The goal was to prove his claims and, probably cash in on the treasure.
80 people ready to go. But the really baffling part is the timing of his disappearance, isn't it?
It is. It's the core of the mystery. On the morning of June 19th, 1934, the very day he was scheduled to lead this big, potentially lucrative 80-person expedition up the mountain, he just walked out of where he was staying and vanished. Poof. Without a trace, never seen or heard from again.
And here's the kicker, right? The part that messes with the simple con man theory.
Exactly. Records confirm it. He never solicited or accepted a single penny from any of those 80 eager expedition members. Not one dime. So if his plan was just to run a scam, why disappear before collecting the money? That lack of financial motive, that unresolved ending, it just cemented him into the mountain's legend. Was he silenced by the giants? Did he find a portal? Or did he just panic and run? We'll never know.
Okay, let's jump forward quite a bit. The disappearance of Carl Landers in May 1999. This one has become almost a classic case of someone vanishing in plain sight.
Oh, the Landers case is deeply unsettling. He was 69 years old, but very experienced. A fit climber, a former Marine. He knew what he was doing. He was hiking the Avalanche Gulch route. That's a popular, relatively well-defined, established path up Shasta. Not some crazy bushwhack.
And he was with friends.
Yes, with two friends. And get this, he was hiking between them. They were close together. They briefly lost sight of him for just moments when they went through a small, localized whiteout patch, like a swirl of snow or cloud. When visibility returned, literally seconds later, he was gone.
Just gone. On a popular trail, between two companions, what did the searches turn up?
Absolutely nothing, despite massive, exhaustive searches. They combed every viable route, looked in crevasses, everything. No body, no gear, no shred of clothing, no footprints leading off strangely. Zero evidence was ever found. Search and rescue teams were completely baffled.
That's where that quote comes from, isn't it?
Yeah, the incident led to that famous, really haunting quote from the SAR coordinator at the time. It perfectly captures the impossible nature of it. He said, he either went up or he went in, but he isn't on the mountain.
Chilling. The implication being?
The implication being either his body is hidden so incredibly well deep inside some unknown crevasse or cave system, or he was somehow taken, removed from the mountain. By what or who, nobody knows.
Okay, the modern cases. They seem no less disturbing, and they really blur the lines between potential mountain accidents and maybe more urban crime scenarios that just happen to end near Shasta,
Yeah.
like Devontae Morgan, who vanished in May 2020.
Yeah, Morgan's case is different. He was 28, visiting the area, didn't know it well. He disappeared from a motel right in the town of Mount Shasta itself after apparently having an argument with his girlfriend. He vanished with no car, no working phone, no hiking gear. He wasn't equipped to be out there. He's officially listed by the California Department of Justice as missing under suspicious circumstances.
And there were some red flags noted by police around the case.
Yes, authorities seem to focus quite heavily on the girlfriend's behavior. They noted her statements were highly inconsistent, and she apparently displayed this really alarming and concerning lack of urgency or worry about him being missing. Police specifically described her demeanor in reports as loony and unconcerned.
Which points towards.
Well, it strongly suggests potential foul play, right? And maybe the disposal of a body somewhere in the vast wilderness surrounding the town. But despite those strong suspicions, without a body, without a crime scene, the case just remains open. And that vacuum of information makes it perfect fodder for people who believe in, hidden interdimensional portals on the mountains swallowing people up.
And then there's Lesner Cardenas. From just recently, 2025 in the outline, though the event was 2021. This one seems arguably the most bizarre of the recent cases. The timeline is just contradictory.
The Cardenas case is deeply weird. He was 21, no known interest in hiking, no connection to the region. The whole thing apparently started way down near Redding when he fled the scene of a minor car accident. Okay, maybe panic, but then he makes this completely inexplicable decision.
The taxi ride.
Yeah. He takes this incredibly expensive taxi ride, multi-$100s, for 2 hours, straight to a specific Mount Shasta trailhead. He pays the driver, gets out, and just walks into the wilderness. Vanishes immediately.
The logistics of that alone are strange. That desperation to get to that specific spot. But the phone data makes it even weirder.
It completely confounds law enforcement, because while the taxi driver confirmed dropping him off at a specific time and place, police later found phone ping data, and this data seemed to place Cardenas' phone at the mountain hours before the car accident near Redding even happened.
Wait, how is that possible?
Nobody knows. It potentially contradicts the entire established timeline of events. Add to that, the spot where he was dropped off, it's relatively mild terrain. A veteran climbing ranger noted that if you just walk downhill from that point, you literally hit a road within an hour. It's not deep wilderness. Yet, extensive searches, aerial, ground, everything found absolutely zero trace. No Cardenas, no clothing, no gear. Rangers openly described the circumstances as very weird and just baffling.
So you look at all these cases, whether the real cause is foul play or an accident or someone panicking and getting lost, they all happen in this place that is just saturated with myths. Myths of hidden portals, subterranean beings, weird energies. The mountain really does act like a mythology magnet, doesn't it?
That really is the core analysis, I think. The human mind hates a vacuum. It's incredibly effective at filling informational voids. When we're faced with a lack of concrete evidence, no body found, contradictory timelines, and experienced climber vanishing between friends, rational explanations start to fail. And the mind almost automatically defaults to the most compelling, the most available, maybe the most exciting narrative it can find.
And Shasta provides those narratives in spades.
Exactly. Shasta's high strangeness reputation doesn't cause these tragedies, obviously, but it profoundly amplifies the perceived strangeness of every single cold case associated with it. It blurs that line between a tragic but possibly explainable event and something truly paranormal. The location itself dictates how we perceive what might have happened.
So, if the mountain is a place that seems to draw out human tragedy or at least amplify its mystery, it's equally known as this beacon, a place that attracts supposedly high-level spiritual and even extraterrestrial visitors. The idea isn't just that the mountain hides things, it's that things or beings are actively arriving there. Let's start with the Ascended Masters and the birth of a major American religious movement right on its slopes.
Right. This narrative kicks off in August 1930. There was a man named Guy Ballard. He was a mining engineer by trade, and he was hiking on the slopes of Shasta. He was reportedly searching for a rumored branch of this esoteric group called the Great White Brotherhood.
But what now?
The Great White Brotherhood. It's this idea from theosophy and related movements of a hidden hierarchy of highly evolved spiritual beings, masters, who secretly guide humanity's evolution, and rumor had it a branch of them operated near Shasta.
Okay, so he was looking for enlightened masters, and he claims he found one. In a pretty specific way.
Oh yeah. He claims he had this extraordinary encounter. An immortal being literally materialized right there in front of him on the trail. This figure was immaculately dressed, apparently, and offered Ballard a drink of a strange, milky liquid from a cup that just materialized out of thin air.
Wow. Okay, straight out of a fantasy novel.
Pretty much. And this figure revealed himself to be none other than the ascended master Saint-Germain. Saint-Germain is this figure rooted in 18th century European mysticism and occultism, believed by some to have achieved physical immortality and mastery over the laws of the universe.
And why Shasta?
Mm.
Did Saint-Germain say why he picked Ballard there? What was the message?
According to Ballard, Saint-Germain explicitly chose him, there on the slopes of Shasta, to be his accredited messenger for a whole new era of spiritual teachings for humanity. Over a series of further encounters and dictations, Saint-Germain apparently provided Ballard with this massive body of new spiritual information, laws, decrees.
And this experience, this single encounter, became the foundation for a whole religion.
Instantly. It became the absolute foundation of the I Am activity. This was a major and really rapidly growing neo-theosophical religious movement founded by Ballard and his wife Edna.
And its growth was fast. You mentioned phenomenal, even during the Great Depression.
Explosive is the word. The movement, based entirely on these divine revelations, supposedly received right there on Mount Shasta, preached things like personal power, manifestation, using decrees to command energy, and it struck a chord. It attracted hundreds of thousands, possibly up to 1 million followers by 1938. It became a major cultural force in American religious life for a while. And just like that, Shasta wasn't just a mountain anymore. It became the literal site of modern divine revelation, a place where the veil between dimensions was supposedly thin enough for a master to just step right through.
Okay, so we have ascended masters popping in. Now let's talk about the other visitors, the UFOs. Shasta has been a documented UFO hotspot for decades, right? Which naturally plays right into that existing Lemurian story we talked about.
Oh, it's a classic feedback loop. There are generations of reports. Locals, spiritual seekers, even pilots describing erratic lights in the sky near the mountain, impossible speed changes, sudden stops, silent movement, and sightings of structured, often metallic-looking craft. It's a well-known hotspot.
And what's fascinating is how these sightings get immediately woven into the local lore, isn't it?
Yeah, the integration is seamless. They didn't really need to invent space aliens coming from Zeta Reticuli or whatever.
They just repurposed the Lemurians they already had.
Exactly. The unidentified aerial phenomena, the UFOs, they're instantly identified by many locals and believers as Lemurian motherships. They're not seen as extraterrestrial necessarily, but as vehicles belonging to that advanced subterranean civilization, Telos. Either they're just visiting the surface, maybe checking things out, or they're emerging from secret portals hidden deep inside the volcano.
So this provides ongoing, tangible, visual evidence that seems to continuously validate the whole hidden city myth.
Precisely. Every strange light, every disk seen near the peak reinforces the belief for those who are already inclined to accept it.
But there is an incredibly compelling, really beautiful, and completely scientific explanation for many of these classic flying saucer sightings around Shasta. One that speaks volumes about the mountain's unique interaction with the atmosphere, the lenticular clouds.
Ah, yes, the lenticulars. They are truly one of the most remarkable meteorological phenomena associated with Shasta. They're quite unique, and they happen there with surprising frequency. Basically, they form when stable, moist air flows horizontally, and it hits the massive obstacle of the peak.
The mountain gets in the way of the wind.
Exactly. It forces the air upwards. This creates these invisible waves in the atmosphere downstream from the peak, like ripples in a stream flowing over a rock. They're called standing waves or mountain waves.
And these waves make clouds, stationary clouds.
Precisely. As the moist air rises up the crest of one of these invisible waves, it cools, and the moisture condenses, forming a cloud. Then as it sinks down the other side of the wave, it warms up, and the cloud evaporates. Because the wave itself is stationary relative to the mountain, the cloud appears to just hang there, perfectly still, often in this distinct lens shape or saucer shape, even while the wind is actually rushing through it.
And the visual resemblance to a classic flying saucer, or even like snack saucers or a mothership, it can be uncanny, right?
It is absolutely undeniable. Shasta is one of the premier spots in the world to see really spectacular lenticular displays. You can see them on more than 60 days a year sometimes, especially in the cooler months when the atmospheric conditions are right. The resemblance is so convincing.
So convincing that.
So convincing, and the photos people take go so viral online that the U.S. Forest Service has repeatedly had to issue public statements, often on social media, sometimes with diagrams, explaining that these beautiful, hovering, stacked objects people are photographing are, in fact, clouds, not advanced alien craft or Lemurian vehicles.
This goes beyond just simple misidentification, though, doesn't it? It feels more like a synergistic relationship.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's symbiotic. The naturally occurring, recurring phenomenon, the spectacular lenticular cloud, provides this ambiguous but visually striking proof that seems to validate the pre-existing Lemurian and UFO myths, which in turn makes people more likely to interpret the next cloud they see as a ship. It creates this powerful, self-sustaining loop of belief. It becomes highly resistant to just simple debunking because the atmosphere itself seems to be confirming the myth, and the myth gives this profound, otherworldly meaning to the atmosphere.
Okay, so we've covered the geology, the ancient stories, the modern myths like Lemuria, the disappearances, the visitors. We arrive now at the core question, really. What is the actual mechanism? What makes Shasta such a potent, enduring source of spiritual mystery and high strangeness? We need to synthesize all these pieces. Let's start with that central, powerful, but kind of non-physical claim that Shasta is a powerful energy vortex, or even the root chakra of the world. Right? You hear this all the time. Spiritual seekers, New Age pilgrims who go there, they almost universally report feeling something, a palpable physical force, an energy, a vibration. And they claim that is the source of the mountain's healing power, its spiritual insight, its revelatory potential. They really believe it's a genuine geophysical phenomenon.
And we have to approach this carefully, looking at both sides, the experiential side and the scientific side. From a scientific standpoint, well, an energy vortex isn't really a recognized or measurable physical or geological concept. There's no known physics that would allow a localized chunk of rock, however big, to generate some kind of unique, powerful energy field capable of producing the physical sensations people report.
It's not like it's a giant magnet or something. We have data on the mountain's magnetic properties, don't we?
Yeah.
What do those USGS surveys show?
Exactly. The USGS did conduct extensive aeromagnetic surveys over the whole region. They flew planes with sensitive magnetometers to map the magnetic properties of the deep rock structure. And yes, they found magnetic anomalies, variations, which is totally expected. Different types of volcanic rock have different magnetic signatures.
But nothing unique, nothing vortex-like.
They definitively did not find any unique, localized, or unusually powerful magnetic field that would distinguish Mount Shasta from any other major Cascade volcano. Its magnetic signature is well within the expected parameters for its geology. So, the conclusion from the science side is pretty clear. The energy people feel, it's absolutely real to them subjectively, but it's an experiential phenomenon, not a measurable geophysical one. It's not coming from the rocks themselves.
Okay, so if the energy isn't geological,
Yeah.
then we have to turn inward to the psychology of the person experiencing it. The answer lies more in the science of awe, perhaps.
Precisely. The feeling is completely real, but it seems to be generated internally by the human mind in response to the overwhelming stimuli the mountain provides. This is where that concept of eco-spirituality really comes into play, that profound spiritual or emotional connection people feel in the presence of vast, powerful nature. Psychological research is pretty clear on this now. Exposure to immense, powerful, beautiful natural scenes, and Mount Shasta, rising 10,000 feet, is a perfect example, reliably induces the powerful human emotion of awe.
And awe isn't just a feeling, right? It actually changes how your brain works momentarily.
Correct. It's not just feeling good or impressed. The experience of profound awe causes measurable neurological shifts. It's been shown to diminish the sense of self, the ego. It makes you feel smaller, less important in the grand scheme of things. It can alter your perception of time, making moments feel longer, more significant. And crucially, it dramatically increases feelings of interconnectedness, of unity with something larger than yourself.
And those psychological shifts, reduced ego, altered time, feeling connected.
Those are the precise universal hallmarks of what people throughout history, across cultures, have described as a mystical or spiritual experience. Whether they frame it as religious revelation, achieving oneness, or maybe connecting with an ascended master on a mountainside.
Which means, when Guy Ballard claimed he met Saint-Germain back in 1930, he was likely already in a heightened state of cognitive and spiritual receptivity, a state of awe, primed by the sheer scale and presence of the volcano itself.
It seems highly probable, yes. He was physically and psychologically primed for an extraordinary experience. Furthermore, the mountain acts like this incredibly effective filter. It attracts a very specific self-selecting population, people who are already drawn to the very ideas of hidden knowledge, cosmic energy, spiritual masters. Research into paranormal belief often identifies traits like transliminality.
Transliminality, what's that?
It's basically a psychological term referring to a kind of hypersensitivity, a thinner boundary, if you like, between conscious and unconscious thought, and between internal stimuli like dreams, thoughts, feelings, and external stimuli, sights, sounds. People who score high in transliminality tend to be more creative, maybe more prone to unusual sensory experiences, and also more likely to report mystical experiences, engage in magical thinking, and find deep meaning in coincidences.
So Shasta provides the perfect stage for these individuals.
It really does. It provides the profound physical trigger, that awe-inducing scale and beauty. It provides the pre-existing mythological framework. You've got Lemurians, masters, portals, readily available as explanations, and it provides the cultural permission, almost an expectation, for people with these cognitive predispositions, like high transliminality, to interpret their powerful internal feelings not just as awe, but as actually meeting Saint-Germain or discovering the root chakra of the world.
So when we pull all these different threads together, the geology, the history, the myths, the psychology, we're left with this unified theory, aren't we? A kind of perfect storm scenario explaining the mountain's enduring mystery.
The synergy is just undeniable. You have these key factors all converging on one spot. First, the profound geological power and grandeur of the volcano itself, which physically primes the human mind for transcendent experiences. Second, the ancient sacred history established by indigenous peoples, which creates this deep cultural expectation that profound, world-altering things should happen here. It's already marked as special. Third, the compelling modern myths, the Lemurians, the ascended masters, which provide these ready-made, exciting narratives to interpret any unusual feelings, visions, or coincidences. Fourth, the striking natural events, especially those spectacular lenticular clouds, which serve as ambiguous but visually stunning proof that seems to reinforce the myths. And finally, factor five. This whole environment attracts a self-selecting population, people who are already seeking, or are perhaps neurologically predisposed to experiencing, high strangeness and paranormal events. It becomes this incredibly potent, closed, self-reinforcing loop of belief and experience.
So the ultimate mystery then maybe isn't really about who built Telos or where Carl Anders went. Maybe it's about how this specific overwhelming combination of factors, geology, history, psychology, weather, makes the experience of the fantastic feel so profoundly, so unshakably real to so many people. Hashtag outro.
Well, we have definitely completed an exhaustive deep dive today. We've covered the immense geological power of a very high-threat volcano. We've traced ancient creation stories that read like geological reports. We charted the absolutely bizarre journey of the Lemurian myth from, lemur fossils to hidden cities. And we had to analyze these real, tragic police files that remain stubbornly, frustratingly unsolved on the mountain's flanks.
Yeah, and science offers really compelling explanations for a lot of it, doesn't it? The clouds, the feeling of energy, the psychology of awe, we can root those firmly in meteorology and cognitive science. But as we discussed, science hits a wall. It can't definitively solve the baffling disappearances of people like Landers or Morgan or Cardenas. There's just not enough evidence. And it certainly can't quantify or invalidate the deeply personal, often life-changing spiritual revelations reported by countless pilgrims and seekers who visit those slopes every single year.
So the file on Mount Shasta, it really remains thick, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Contradictory, compelling, and entirely open. It's filled with the cold logic of USGS reports and police records on one page, and then on the next, it's saturated with channeled manuscripts and detailed eyewitness accounts of the completely impossible.
Perhaps the case remains eternally open because the real mystery isn't actually about what the mountain might be hiding deep down in its magma core. Maybe it's more about what its overwhelming scale, its undeniable power reveals about us, about our own humanity.
What do you mean?
Well, the sheer size and presence of a place like Shasta, it almost effortlessly activates our most fundamental, most profound human needs, doesn't it? The deep need for meaning in a sometimes chaotic world, the need for connection to nature, to something bigger, and that deep, almost universal need to believe in something vast, something eternal, something overwhelmingly larger than ourselves. Maybe that powerful, self-generated human need is the real force at work here, more potent perhaps than any seismic signature or magnetic anomaly. It's something definitely worth thinking about, that intersection of nature and belief. It's often called eco-spirituality, something for you to maybe explore further.
A lot to think about. Till next time, keep digging.